people might think that it's a stupid dress or whatever, but if you do it right, it could be such an incredible tool to get everyone together.
Creative Director, Fashion Director, Stylist, Designer, Lady Gaga's Image Director, Artist, Provocateur. Many labels have been attached to Nicola Formichetti, yet there are few that Formichetti likes to associate himself with. He may stand as the Creative Director for Uniqlo, Fashion Director for Lady Gaga, founder of Nicopanda, and a creative consultant at Haus of Gaga. But he prefers to be titleless. When asked, what would you consider yourself? When speaking to the Fashion Victims podcast about his preferred title, he responded, "It's all of that or none of them, you know? What does creative director mean anyway?"
Hey, my name is Nicola Formichetti. I actually don't know what I do exactly. I'm a lover of fashion and style. I've been in business for the last 20 years. I do from designing to styling to creative directions.
Looking back into the life of Formichetti thus far, you will notice a salient theme, a rule breaker persona. There was no formal education or internships to get him to today. He walked alongside the curb, creating a rugged path for himself instead. 1 year, which could be considered his breakout year, was full of failures. The crowd of brand collaboration offers also were the ones that fired him shortly after. His work was loud, and he was often told to tone it down. He rarely obeyed. He was a misfit, after all. One of Formichetti's greatest mentors, although he didn't know it at the time, was his high school mentor, the great Oliviero Toscani. Art director Oliviero Toscani paved the way for the inclusive fashion campaigns we see today. The Italian photographer worked as the art director for United Colors of Benetton for 18 years. Brands, he says, have now understood what he has since the early 80s and are finally embracing diverse models with open arms. During the mid-90s and early noughties, United Colors of Benetton was arguably one of the world's most recognizable fashion brands. Both famous and infamous, the striking visuals of their adverts, at times entirely bereft of any reference to their products, political posturing, and diverse roster of models made them influential in both fashion and pop culture, and absolutely ahead of their time.
He taught me about photography and composition and concepts, and it was I mean, if I think about it now, I had the greatest teacher of all time teaching me fashion imagery. It was insane.
Nicola Formichetti was born in Japan in May 1977 to a Japanese mother and Italian father, both of whom worked in the aviation industry. His father was a pilot and his mother was a flight attendant. Nicola spent his childhood living between Tokyo and Rome. This upbringing, of course, had a significant influence on whom Nicola ended up becoming. The two dissimilar cultures converged and shaped Formichetti in person, creativity, and career. As a child, he would frequent at Buddhist shrines and Roman cathedrals for architecture. His work is the friction between the two, he says to New Luxury. I was in a boy choir when I was super small and just in awe of these crazy, incredible sculptures and paintings in Rome. He continued. A boy in choir certainly seems to contradict his innate behaviours, to stand for his own and rebel creatively. Nicola Formichetti nowadays tends to draw outside the lines, or as he calls it, always do something a little wrong. It hasn't always been this way. When referring to his mixed culture, rearing and paralleling his Japanese and Italian heritage, he encapsulates it perfectly. I was always a bit of a punk, but also a student. He admitted to New Luxury, when I was living in Japan, I was a foreigner. When I was in Italy, I was a foreigner. And when I moved to London, I was a foreigner. I became a master of fitting in, he reflected. He found this fitting with the more devious kids in school and has since identified himself as a misfit. We misfits cling together and have a weird posse. High school was also where his artistic streak began to shine through, sporting a crazy but cool fashion and finding muse in the girls. He would dress them up and do a photo shoot, he reflects, with Fashion Victims podcast. Formichetti was introduced to the world of fashion by his fashion lover mother. Although she was Japanese, she was drawn to Italian style and often showed Nicola Italian Vogue and would take him window shopping in the streets of Rome. He was 10 years old at the time. He later delved further into the domain of fashion magazines when attending boarding school in Rome. Here, however, it was London fashion that caught his attention, becoming in awe of the London fashion scene at the time. A seed of desire was planted in Formichetti to follow the fashion northwest to one of the 4 fashion capitals of the world, London. To clutch his long-standing ambition of moving to London, Formichetti used architecture school as an excuse to his parents. A career path that turned out to be a short-lived venture. I literally walked in the front door of the architecture school and then ran out of the back one to go clubbing for 3 years, he confessed to Vice. The 4 years he was thought to be in school by his parents, he instead used his student loans to pay for clothes and clubbing, an act that would serve as far more fruitful to Formichetti's career than formal education ever would have. That's how I got into fashion, actually, through the clubs and partying. And this was no stretch of the truth. Formichetti's entry into the fashion industry was indeed through the club door. By night, he would party and network, and by day, he would work at the trendy London boutique called the Pineal Eye. If clubbing was his industry door, the Pineal Eye was his key, attracting fashion heads, magazine directors, magazine editors, celebrities, and industry leaders. The store was a sort of cool kid hangout of the 90s, and Formichetti soon became its art director and head buyer. Magazine editors were frequent at the Pineal Eye, but Katie England, fashion editor of Dazed and Confused, was the first to take notice of Formichetti and his talent. She offered him a once-a-month page at the bi-monthly magazine, a feature to be named I Spy. This developed into Nicola becoming the magazine's fashion editor in 2005 and creative director in 2008. Formichetti has since spoken of his time at Dazed, previously Dazed and Confused, voicing his appreciation for the magazine that allowed him to limitlessly explore his unique originality and unique creative expression. Over the years, Formichetti has frequently collaborated with legendary French photographer and fashion designer Hedi Slimane. Also a fellow creative director, having worked for brands including Dior Homme, Men's Christian Dior, Yves Saint Laurent and Celine. The duet began working together when Slimane became a photographer. Formichetti would style fashion stories with him. The career overlaps have perpetuated ever since, even so through Lady Gaga. For Formichetti, Slimane has been a great teacher, supporter, and inspiration.
Yeah, I mean, what Hedi did completely changed everyone's wardrobe. I mean, until today, you know, the whole skinny silhouette was so impactful in the early 2000s, and then lasted for so long. And I love that he always takes inspiration from the street, for the street, you know, and via Paris. I think it's very interesting. I mean, he was kind of one of the first fashion person that I met in Paris, and then later we started collaborating when he became a photographer, and I was styling fashion stories with him, and he was always so encouraging for me to do my own thing. He's like, you know, he was very giving me advice and where to go, and I still remember we did so many incredible photo shoots together, and we went to Japan and LA, and I learned a lot from him.
During the inception of Vogue Homme Japan in 2008, Formichetti was headed up as the magazine fashion director, then creative director, before the publication's rebrand to GQ Style in 2012. In 2010, he became the artistic director of the fresh fashion house Mugler, where he remained for 2 years before becoming fashion director at the Japanese retailer Uniqlo in 2013. He contributed to various fashion publications during these years, including V, Another Magazine, Arena Homme Plus, Harper's Bazaar USA. He worked with renowned fashion houses, including Dolce & Gabbana, Alexander McQueen, Gareth Pugh, Carrie Cassette Player Mundane, Prada, Missoni, and Iceberg. Additionally, he collaborated with Lady Gaga, Nike, Umbro, Puma, Stussy, Topman, H&M, Edwin, Kim Jones, and rapper Brooke Candy over the years. In November 2010, he was named one of the most influential creative forces working in fashion today. He was awarded the Isabella Blow Award for Fashion Creator during the 2010 British Fashion Awards. In 2018, he was honoured with an Emery Award, which aims to recognise succeeding advocates in the LGBTQ community. V Magazine's cover shoot of Lady Gaga in 2009 proved a pivotal moment in the lives of both Gaga and Formichetti. A moment that would mark the beginning of a long-standing business and personal relationship between the two artists. Formichetti has been Lady Gaga's stylist and fashion director since this shoot, operating under the Haus of Gaga. Formichetti refers to the cover shoot encounter as instant love, a simple statement that seems to have since extended beyond its original intentions. There was instant love for each other, but also for exploring the weird, inimitable and avant-garde and celebrating differences over similarities. Formichetti gushed over Lady Gaga during the FVP podcast, explaining she was one of the few that didn't attempt to diminish or tone down his creativity, and instead encouraged the opposite.
She wore a Mugler outfit that I designed. So he arrived directly from Paris. It was this really strange color that it was very surprising for me to see. So we looked at the color, we were like, So Guy was like, just fucking painted black, and we just dipped the whole dress into black latex. Liquid latex, and we put some studs on. I mean, this is what happens always with us. We receive something, and then we're like, nah, it could be better. So we just put some studs on and put some latex, liquid latex on, and then off you go. We always want to do something to make it her, make it alive, make it moving, make it pop culture, make art from it. We never had complaints before, so that's good.
In the early days of working together, fashion and music weren't encouraged to collaborate like today, but were prompted to operate parallel rather than intersecting. Formichetti found this confusing. After all, they worked together so well. He continues to defy this and revolutionize other rigid traditions. Alexander McQueen was one of the few who saw the vision and agreed to lend Formichetti clothing for shoots. It wasn't long after that other creatives began to follow. Formichetti joined Thierry Mugler in 2010 and was determined from the beginning to leave his mark on the French fashion brand. Among the many unforgettable impacts Nicola made, a prominent one would have been his decision to drop Thierry from the label to leave the sole name Mugler. His work at the brand was an expression of the very grungy style of Formichetti, dark and gothic themes which may be explanatory of Zombie Boy. Zombie Boy was Formichetti's first campaign with the brand and was for the Thierry Mugler 2011 Autumn-Winter ready-to-wear men's collection. The campaign would centre around Rick Genest, aka Zombie Boy, also known as Nicola's muse, following Formichetti's discovery of the self-proclaimed sideshow on Facebook. Before Rick Genest's debut as Zombie Boy, he performed in sideshows and freak shows, exhibiting his body covered 80% in tattoos, or a possibly better description, one great tattoo of a skeleton covering the entirety of his body.
I am a dreamer. This for me represents the real alternative energy. Free space, blue sky, green garden. Denim is everything. It's really a lifestyle. I thought there was a person out there that can give to the new generation the diesel heritage a new spin. Him.
First time I experienced diesel was in London in the 90s. It made me feel part of a tribe. What Renzo did back then was to inspire people. I want to recreate it for today. It's a reboot.
Formichetti is best known as the artistic director of Italian fashion label Diesel, a role he stepped into in 2013. The label was gearing up for a brand reboot following a tough previous 5 years in business, and Formichetti seemed the perfect fit. During an interview with Vogue, Rosso explained, "Nicola shares my creative vision, and with his help, I hope to continue to break the rules, push the envelope, and introduce Diesel to an entirely new generation." Formichetti's role as creative director is all-encompassing and all-consuming, overseeing all aspects of the brand, including design, marketing, digital, and retail. It's really fascinating to orchestrate because you can really ensure that everything is totally coherent. It gives you great energy, and it makes use of my entire skill base, which I've used separately until now, he told Hero magazine. Prior to onboarding Formichetti, Renzo lacked the time required to give full attention to the brand. Formichetti's assignment was to set alight the brand's fire again. The Diesel reboot campaign wouldn't feature models, and instead bring young, upcoming creatives centre stage. A Bronx-born graffiti artist, Michelle Calderon, Japanese actress Kiko Mitsuhara, and former Olympic swimmer Casey Legler were among the talents Formichetti sought, discovering most online. The reboot turned out to be a radically cool campaign that year, arguably of all time. Formichetti created Nicopanda alongside his brother Andrea Formichetti. As for the name's origin, it stems from Nicola's childhood dub. Since Formichetti was half Asian and, as he describes it, a little chubby and bare-looking, Nicopanda was coined. The brand was launched in September 2011 via pop-ups in the New York district of Tribeca. Also home to Nicola since 2016. Despite his multitude of successes in the lead-up to the launch, he was apprehensive that no one would show and encouraged invitees to bring friends along to the event, like he needed to. Understandably, the pop-up was a massive success and followed other several transient stores in Lane Crawford in Beijing, Hong Kong, and Tokyo in 2012. The New York-based brand is known for its edgy, playful, ready-to-wear clothing and accessories, designed and available to all. With a hyper-creative philosophy, they constantly innovate and develop unique collaborations to bring the best of high-end streetwear. Behind the work of Formichetti, there is a bigger meaning, a bigger purpose. Constantly, he is trying to disrupt normality and break down the stale industry status quo. For one, Formichetti deems the concept of luxury as snobbish. It was something he never came from. For him, the pursuit of fashion isn't necessarily the pursuit of what is deemed beautiful or holding high status. When I style someone, it's not to make them beautiful. I like to push the idea of what they could be. It's very important to represent different races, different body types, stereotypes, different types of beauty for me. Different beauties. For me, that's a must. I love to empower people who are not normally being supported in the industry. New luxury.
You know, like I'm half Japanese, half Italian, and or like, you know, my friends were pure Japanese, but they don't sometimes see themselves in the magazine world, or different body types, or people who are non-binary, right? And people are trans, and then so I'm a huge supporter of that kind of those people, because I always feel myself as a kind of like a misfit of the industry, where I always like give a fuck what everyone else is thinking. If my friends love it, you know, so I'm always like the rebel, where I always try to do different things. So I'm always supporting these people who are different.